Check out my new computer company. We have the fastest processors, the best screens, and the lowest price. Want to buy one?
Yeah, thanks. I'll stick with my Mac. Simon Sinek explains exactly why your pitch failed. You started with what you do. Apple starts with why they do it.
Oh.
And start with why, Sinek proves that people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Today, we learn how to inspire loyalty, not just transactions.
Welcome to Wealth Distilled. Let's just say I'm the logic marketer, and I have to admit, I'm already feeling a bit challenged here.
I can imagine.
I mean, I've spent years in marketing where, speed, quality, and low costs were the holy trinity, the most rational selling points. I believe in data, facts, and features. But today, we're diving deep into Simon Sinek's foundational framework, Start with Why, based on this whole stack of sources you've sent over.
And that tension you're feeling is exactly why this deep dive is so important. Our mission today is to unpack this really revolutionary concept, but not just as another business strategy or some motivational talk. We're going to explore it through the lens of human biology. We're trying to find the fundamental truth of leadership. Why do some leaders, some organizations inspire this intense, almost irrational devotion?
Yeah, the kind that has people lining up for a new phone.
Exactly. While others who might have objectively better products are just interchangeable commodities.
Okay, so we're moving past the quarterly results and the feature comparison charts.
Way past them. We're aiming straight for the emotional core of what actually motivates people.
So this is setting the stage.
Precisely. We're setting the stage to understand the difference between, let's call it conventional business thinking, which almost always relies on manipulation.
Ooh, a strong word.
It is, but it's accurate. And we'll get into that. The difference between that and truly inspiring leadership, which relies on belief. The core truth we're exploring today is this. There are leaders, and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power. Those who lead inspire us. And the core difference, the absolute fundamental difference, lies in how they communicate. And it all starts with that belief.
All right, let's unpack this then. If we're going to challenge my rational, feature-first mindset, we have to start with the framework itself. Sinek calls it the golden circle.
Yes, the golden circle. The best way to visualize it is as a classic bullseye target, 3 concentric rings.
Okay, I can picture that.
And it's more than just a neat model. The sources show it's a framework that actually finds order and predictability in human behavior. It explains why the most influential organizations operate the way they do and why they seem to have this disproportionate degree of success.
Okay, so let's start on the outside. The biggest ring, this is familiar territory for me.
The what?
Right. The what is universal. Every single organization on the planet knows their what. It's what they sell, the services they offer, the job they perform.
We make great computers. We're a law firm.
Oh.
Exactly. Or we offer financial consulting. It's the clearest, most tangible part of the entire operation. It's easily defined, easily measured, no mystery there.
Then we move one ring in to the HOW. This is where most companies try to say they're different, right? The value proposition.
Correct. The HOWs describe how you do what you do differently or, better than the competition. These are your differentiating factors.
Your unique selling proposition.
That's the marketing term for it, yeah. It could be, we focus on beautiful design, or our processes are proprietary, or we have the best customer service. Some companies can articulate their HW pretty well.
But not all of them.
Well, a lot of them just confuse it with more features. They'll say something like, we use 300 checks and balances to ensure quality.
Yeah.
It's still kind of feature-centric. It's not really explaining the culture or the method behind the madness.
And then, at the very center, the bullseye, the WNHAY.
Yeah.
Based on our sources, this is the fuzziest one, but also the most critical.
It is the absolute core. It's the purpose, the cause, or the belief that drives the entire organization. It's the reason the company exists beyond making a profit.
And you're saying profit isn't a WHY.
Absolutely not. Making money is a result, always a result. The WHY is the philosophical engine. It's the reason you get out of bed in the morning, the reason your employees should care, and ultimately, the reason your customers should care. And very, very few organizations or individuals can clearly and consistently articulate this core belief.
Okay, so as the logic marketer, I have to argue for what's normal. The conventional way of communicating, which is practiced by, 99% of businesses, seems the most efficient. This is the outside-in model.
And this is precisely where the system breaks down if you want to inspire anyone.
Why, though? It's logical.
Outside-in communication starts with the clearest, most tangible thing, the what, and it moves toward the fuzziest, the WHY. Your opening pitch for your computer company was a perfect textbook example.
We have the fastest processors, the best screens, the lowest price. Want to buy one?
Exactly. You are trying to convince me with rational data and superior features. You're speaking to my brain's logic centers.
And why shouldn't I? I am appealing directly to a person's rationality and their self-interest.
Right.
If my specs are better and my price is lower, mathematically, that is the best purchasing decision. Logic dictates they should buy my computer.
Logically, yes. But the source material shows again and again that this approach fails to build anything lasting. It might convince someone to make a single transaction, sure, but it completely fails to compel them. It fails to build trust.
So what am I doing wrong?
You're relying on a complex analysis of features, which is exhausting for the consumer, and you fail to establish any kind of real connection or loyalty. You're just highlighting differences, but you're not communicating a shared identity. You're just another commodity on the shelf.
Okay, so the revolutionary solution Sinek proposes is the inside-out communication, starting with the WHY. This feels like it requires a leap of faith, doesn't it? To start with some vague philosophical concept instead of a real, tangible benefit.
It feels like faith, but it's actually anchored in biology, which we'll get into in a minute. It's a biological imperative. Truly inspiring leaders communicate from the center out. WHY, then how W, then what?
So, Apple, the ultimate case study. They do this consistently.
Consistently. They communicate their belief system before they even mention their products.
Okay, let's run the script. If Apple were to pitch a product using this inside-out method, what does that actually sound like?
It starts with the belief, the WHY. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently.
Notice there's no mention of a product.
Not at all. It's a statement of purpose, completely independent of anything tangible. They're just telling you what they believe about the world.
Okay, that sets the philosophical tone. Then they move to the HOW, which details how they bring that belief to life.
Exactly. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and incredibly user-friendly. This explains the mechanism. It's the culture of simplicity and design integrity that drives their internal processes. It's how they act on their belief.
And only then, at the very end, does the product itself show up as the proof.
And we happen to make great computers, want to buy one. The sources just hammer this point home. That reversed order feels entirely different. It's not a sales pitch anymore. It feels like an invitation.
It feels like you're joining a movement.
Yes. You're drawn in not by the specs of the machine, but by the idea that buying this Mac is a tangible manifestation of your own desire to challenge the status quo, to think differently.
I see the emotional pull, I really do. But as a logic marketer, I balk at the vagueness. I say, we believe in challenging the status quo. A competitor could just copy that philosophy tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why does it work for Apple and not for my brand new company?
Because the what, the product, becomes the tangible, verifiable proof of the WHY. When Apple created the iPod, it wasn't just an MP3 player. It was the mechanism to challenge the music industry's status quo. When they launched the iPhone, it was the tool to challenge the existing mobile phone giants. The product itself, the what, is just the proof that they are living their stated belief.
So if I copied their philosophy, but my products were clunky or ugly or difficult to use,
it would instantly feel fake, inauthentic. Because your what doesn't prove your WHY. That structural integrity is everything.
That integrity. That must be why Apple felt comfortable changing their name back in 2007. From Apple Computer Inc. to just Apple Inc.
That was a huge philosophical statement. They redefine themselves not by what they make, but by what they believe.
Right.
If an organization defines itself solely by the what, we are a computer company, that's all it can ever be. You're putting yourself in a box, limiting your potential influence and your ability to innovate in other areas.
Which is exactly why Dell and Gateway failed so spectacularly when they tried to launch PDAs and MP3 players. I remember that.
It felt conceptually wrong to the consumer, didn't it? Because those products weren't clear proof of a broader belief. They were just opportunistic whats. It was a money grab.
That feeling conceptually wrong,
Yeah.
that brings us right back to the irrational side of decision-making. I need some hard science here. I need to understand the biological mechanism that makes belief win out over features. Why does my logical pitch fail?
Okay, let's talk brain anatomy. This is where Sinek's framework goes from just good business advice to really a fundamental truth about how we're all wired. The golden circle maps perfectly onto a cross-section of the human brain.
So you've got the new brain, which handles the facts, and then the old brain, which is all instincts.
That's a great way to put it. The outermost ring of the golden circle, the what, corresponds directly to the outermost section of our brain, the neocortex.
The new brain.
Yes, that neocortex is the newest part of the human brain, evolutionarily speaking. It's responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought. It processes facts, figures, dates, features, and critically, it's where we house our capacity for language, for linear processing.
Okay, so when I give my pitch listing, the fastest processors and the lowest prices, I'm speaking directly and exclusively to the neocortex.
You are. You're allowing people to understand vast amounts of complicated information. You're giving them all the data they need to build a rational case for buying your product. But here is the biological punchline.
I'm waiting for it.
Understanding facts and features does not inherently drive behavior or loyalty. The neocortex processes the data, but it delegates the actual decision.
And where does it send that decision? To the center.
Straight to the center, to the two inner rings of the golden circle, the HOW and the WHY. And these align perfectly with the limbic brain.
The old brain.
The much older inner core of the brain. This is the powerhouse. It governs all human behavior, all decision-making, and all of our feelings, including deep trust, loyalty, bonding, emotion. It's fundamentally geared towards survival and instinctual responses.
So that's the ultimate control center. We've located the source of the purchase decision.
We have, but here is the key disconnect. The biological irony that explains exactly why your outside-in communication fails. The limbic brain, despite controlling all behavior and decision-making, has absolutely no capacity for language.
Wait, what? No capacity for language?
None. It communicates through feelings and instincts. It's an ancient system that deals with survival, not syntax.
Wow. Okay, that explains so much about human nature. We made the decision deep within our emotional core, and then we struggle to articulate the real reason why.
We struggle because the part of the brain that made the decision literally cannot communicate its reasoning in words. The source draws this brilliant analogy to try to explain exactly why you trust your closest friends, or why you truly love your spouse.
I'd stammer. I'd list rational things like they're kind, they're smart.
But those aren't the real reasons, are they? They're post facto rationalizations. The real reason is how they make you feel, and that feeling originates in the limbic brain.
That's the famous gut feeling.
It originates right there, in the limbic system. When a company communicates inside out, starting with WHY with a belief, they're speaking directly to that decision-making center. When that WHY resonates with you, it just feels right.
Okay, so if the decision is made in the limbic brain, and that part can't talk, how do we justify the purchase to ourselves? Or, to our partners?
We borrow information from the neocortex. We are forced to pull data and facts, price, features, quality from the rational brain after the decision is already made, just to justify it. We rationalize the emotional choice.
Which is why polling and focus groups and all that market research that asks people why they bought something is, well, it's inherently flawed.
Exactly. They only capture the rational justification, not the real emotional driver.
This completely undermines my profession. You're telling me that when a consumer tells a pollster they bought product A because it was 10% cheaper, they're often lying, or at least deceiving themselves about the real motivation.
That's the insight. The emotional connection came first. The 10% price difference just gave them the language, the neocortex data, to justify that decision to others and to themselves. And this is why the limbic brain is so powerful. It can drive behavior that completely contradicts rational self-interest.
Like with Apple.
Look at Apple again. Rationally, for many, many years, a comparable PC was faster, it was cheaper, and it had a far greater selection of software. Purely rational humans should have all bought PCs.
But they didn't. They formed tribes around Apple. They paid a premium and put up with inconvenience.
Because the Mac spoke to their identity, to their desire to challenge the status quo. The purchase decision was made in the heart, in the limbic brain, because the company's cause aligned with the buyer's own identity. When you communicate inside out, you're engaging the part of the brain that actually drives behavior, and that results in loyalty. The natural order for true inspiration is hearts the limbic brain first, then minds the neocortex for the rationalization.
Okay, I understand the inspirational potential. I really do. But let me bring it back to immediate reality. Most companies aren't aiming for world-changing loyalty. They're aiming for quarterly sales targets. If all I want is a quick sale, why complicate things with purpose? Why not just drop the price or offer a huge promotion? We know that works. And it works fast.
You're absolutely right. Those methods are incredibly effective for short-term transactions. The source material is very clear on this. There are only two ways to influence human behavior. You either manipulate or you inspire.
And manipulations work.
Oh, they work. Manipulations rely on stimulating the emotional limbic brain temporarily to force a transaction, but they do not breed long-term loyalty or any kind of structural strength.
Okay, let's break down these manipulations. Price cuts, for example. We see them everywhere.
Price manipulation is what Sinek calls heroin for the seller.
Wow.
Think about it. The initial high is great. You get a huge surge in sales. But the more you do it, the more your customer base becomes dependent on it. Once you train your customers that your product is only worth buying when it's 20% off, it becomes almost impossible to get them to ever pay full price again.
It's a downward spiral. It shrinks your margins, it commoditizes your product.
And it forces you to constantly sell more just to stay afloat. It creates a race to the bottom that absolutely destroys your value proposition.
And if you're stuck in that commodity trap, there's no room for loyalty, because if the next guy drops his price by 1%, your customer is gone.
Exactly. Loyalty built on price isn't loyalty at all. It's just the cheapest transaction currently available. And the cost of playing that price game goes way beyond the bottom line. It eventually corrupts the culture of the business because you have to start cutting internal corners, labor, materials, ethics, just to sustain that low cost.
Okay, what about promotions and incentives, like massive cashback offers or complex rebates? We saw this with GM for years in the 90s and 2000s.
And that cost them hundreds of millions in the long run. They literally created a generation of cashback junkies who would only buy a car when it was incentivized. But even more dangerously, the retail and consumer industries rely very heavily on two concepts to make these massive promotions profitable. They're called breakage and slippage.
Breakage and slippage. Those sound like terms from an accounting department, not a customer service manual. Let's unpack the ruthless strategy behind them.
Okay, so breakage refers to the percentage of customers who fail to claim a promised rebate, a cashback offer, or some promotional item.
And slippage.
Slippage is for those who do claim it, but they lose the check, or they forget to cash it, or they fail to apply it correctly. And companies often intentionally make the claim process complicated. Requiring of physical mail-ins, multiple proofs of purchase, navigating some obscure web portal all to increase the breakage rates.
So the promotion is advertised to get the purchase, right? It stimulates that temporary emotional gain in the limbic brain. Hey, I'm getting a deal. But the profitability of the whole campaign actually relies on the customer failing to follow through because it's too inconvenient or too complex.
It is the absolute definition of short-sighted manipulation. You are profiting from your customers' disorganization and inaction. Any company that relies on high breakage and slippage rates cannot, by definition, claim to be customer-focused. They're just using an emotional stimulus to drive a behavior while setting up roadblocks to fulfilling their promise.
What about novelty? The constant stream of new and improved features. My personal favorite marketing tactic.
Novelty works, of course, but it's temporary. The sources use the great example of the Motorola RAZR phone back in 2004. It sold 50 million units.
It was everywhere.
It was novel because it was thin, it was sleek, it had that unique keypad technology. But that novelty didn't fundamentally change the industry or the consumer experience. It was just a temporary feature fix.
And as soon as competitors released their own sleek, thin phones, the RAZR was just another phone. It became obsolete.
Because they confuse novelty with genuine innovation. True innovation, which is driven by a clear WHY, actually changes behavior and society. Think of the light bulb, the internet, or the shift from physical music to digital. Novelty drives temporary transactions, which forces the company into this constant stressful cycle of feature upgrades. And that's unsustainable for both the buyer and the seller.
So if all these manipulations only earn short-term repeat business, how do we get to genuine loyalty? What's the difference?
Repeat business is purely transactional. It requires the constant application of those price drops or new features. Loyalty is relational. Loyalty is when your customers are willing to turn down a better product or a lower price from a competitor because they believe in your WHY. They trust you so completely, they don't even research the competition anymore. They feel a sense of belonging to your cause.
And what happens to organizations that rely exclusively on these short-term manipulations, the ones without a clear WHY to guide their structure?
They become structurally fragile and often ethically compromised. Without a cause or a belief beyond just instant self-gain, organizations get weaker, which then encourages and rewards short-sighted decisions. The sources connect this directly to the 2008 economic crisis.
The housing market crash.
The banking and housing industries had these massive bonus structures that incentivized employees to make incredibly risky, high-volume loans. decisions that benefited the individual in the short term, but were absolutely catastrophic for the institution and the country in the long term.
So the lack of a guiding WHY, a purpose outside of just profit, allowed the HOWs, the internal compensation and incentive systems, to become completely corrupted.
Yeah.
The employees were just playing a self-gain game, not serving any larger purpose.
Exactly. When you remove the belief system and replace it with purely transactional metrics, people will optimize for those metrics no matter the consequences. That high-stress environment, built on fear of failure or the constant pursuit of the next bonus, is the ultimate cost of a WHY-less business model.
That shifts the entire focus from managing transactions to building an inspired community. And the ultimate example of this difference isn't a modern corporation at all. It's that rivalry between two groups trying to achieve manned flight over a century ago.
The famous rivalry between Samuel Langley and the Wright Brothers. It's an essential case study in the sources because it perfectly encapsulates the difference between the what and the WHY.
Let's look at Langley first, the what guy. By any rational measure, he was the one who was set up for success.
Langley had all the ingredients. He was a respected scientist, the secretary of the prestigious Smithsonian Institution. He had, for all intents and purposes, unlimited resources.
A $50,000 grant from the War Department, which was fortune back then.
A fortune. And he had the backing of influential friends like Andrew Carnegie and Alexander Graham Bell. He assembled a dream team of experts, including a Cornell-trained engineer. And the New York Times followed his every move, guaranteeing him massive press coverage the moment he succeeded.
So he had money, talent, prestige, and press. All the whats.
All of them. But his motivation, his WHY, was purely extrinsic. He wanted fame. He wanted riches. He wanted personal prestige. His goal was just to be first. It was a self-driven, what-driven ambition.
And the result?
Total humiliation. His test flight, the aerodrome, failed spectacularly. It nosedived straight into the Potomac River, and the media just mocked him mercilessly.
Okay, now contrast that with the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur. They ran a humble bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio.
They were the ultimate underdogs. They had no government grants. They funded all their research with the meager proceeds from selling bicycles. They had no high-level connections, and not a single person on their small team had a college education, let alone an advanced degree.
But they had a clear, unwavering WHY.
Their belief wasn't about being first or getting rich. They believed that if they could figure out how to fly, it would fundamentally change the course of the world. Their motivation was rooted in service to an idea, serving something bigger than themselves, and that deep conviction inspired their work, regardless of all the setbacks.
And they faced setbacks daily. The sources note their methodical approach, how they'd take 5 sets of parts with them out to Kitty Hawk, because they fully expected to fail over and over again before succeeding.
That is the behavior of inspired people. Failure wasn't a reason to quit for them. It was just confirmation that they were one step closer to solving a problem they deeply, truly believed in. And then on December 17th, 1903, they succeeded.
Here's the kicker.
Here is the profound consequence of Langley's lack of WHY. The moment the Wright brothers succeeded, Langley quit.
He quit because his core motivation, just being first, was gone. He didn't actually care about flight. He only cared about the personal achievement and the glory that would come with it.
And that is the decisive lesson. Money can buy what? It can buy talent, materials, press coverage. But money cannot buy WHY. It cannot buy inspiration and belief. Average organizations hire skilled people and then try to motivate them with carrots and sticks, bonuses, promotions, fear. Truly inspiring organizations hire already motivated people, people who believe what the organization believes, and then they inspire them further with a cause. And those inspired people, they stick with you through all the continuous failures.
This makes perfect sense for a small team, gathered around a passionate founder. But as an organization scales up, when the founder isn't on the shop floor every day, that initial WHY can get diluted. It gets lost in layers of bureaucracy and management who are just focused on metrics. How do you maintain that clarity, that discipline, when you go from a bicycle shop to a massive corporation?
That is the critical question of scale, and this is where we need to look at the golden circle in 3 dimensions. Visualize it not as a flat bullseye anymore, but as a cone, or a megaphone. This explains the structure you need for long-term health and consistency.
Okay, a megaphone. So it amplifies the message. The tip is the origin.
Exactly. The WHY type, the leader, the founder, the visionary, sits at the very tip of that megaphone. They are the ones who articulate the clear cause, the belief. The next layer down, the broad middle of the cone, is for the HOW types.
The managers.
The senior executives, the managers, the system builders, they are responsible for building the infrastructure, the culture, the processes, what Sinek calls the discipline of how W to bring that WHY to tangible life.
And the widest part of the cone, the output, that's the what's. The products, the employees, the marketing copy, all the physical manifestations, that's the actual amplification of the belief.
Right. And if the message coming out the wide end, the what, is inconsistent with the belief at the tip, the WHY, then the megaphone is just fuzzy. The audience hears chaos, not conviction. So the job of management, that how W layer, is to ensure absolute consistency of what, so that everything the company says and does proves what it believes.
But how do those mid-level HOW types, the ones making thousands of daily, mundane decisions about hiring, partnerships, or product features, how do they ensure they're staying consistent with a philosophical belief? They need a practical filter.
They need what Sinek calls the celery test. This provides the crucial discipline needed to reject those short-term profitable opportunities that actually violate the core belief.
Okay, let's detail the metaphor. The WHY is the belief. Let's say it's health.
Okay, if your WHY is health and you walk into a grocery store to buy ingredients, you might find celery, rice milk, and Oreos. You must, in principle, reject the Oreos, even if they're on sale, even if they're profitable, even if you're tempted in the moment.
Because they're fundamentally inconsistent with your ultimate cause.
Right. You might make a quick buck selling Oreos, but you completely undermine your identity as a health advocate.
That makes perfect sense for a personal diet. But in business, rejecting that profitable Oreo opportunity takes immense discipline, especially when you have shareholders breathing down your neck.
It does, but organizations that fail the celery test inevitably dilute their brand and confuse their most loyal customers. We saw this with Dell. Dell was defined as a company that made customized, affordable computers.
Right.
When they jumped into making PDAs and MP3 players, they were selling Oreos. They were capitalizing on a new market segment, pure self-gain. But those products didn't resonate as proof of a Dell belief system. And consumers said, that doesn't feel right coming from you.
So if Dell had a clear WHY, something like to empower users with highly tailored, efficient technology, then their decision filter would have rejected generalized consumer electronics like MP3 players. They needed products that reinforced customization and efficiency.
Precisely. The WHY has to act as an iron filter. A powerful counterexample is Southwest Airlines. Everyone thinks their WY is low cost, but that's a what? That's a result.
So what was their actual cause?
They were built to champion a cause. We are the champion for the common man. They weren't competing against legacy airlines for the 15% of the population that already flew. They were competing against the car and the bus for the 85% of Americans who couldn't afford or justify air travel.
Wow. That WHY changes everything. It reframes their entire competition and justifies all their operational HOWs.
And every single decision they made passes the celery test. Their HOWs only flying short routes, using only one type of plane for simplified maintenance, quick turnaround times, refusing to assign seating, minimal baggage fees, all of it passes the test for championing the common man by keeping costs and complexity down. Their what is visible proof of their WHY.
This concept of consistency must apply equally to internal culture and metrics, not just external products. You mentioned the example of the debt collection agency. That's a fascinating test of this WHY concept.
Bridgeport Financial, yes. They operate in an industry that is notorious for manipulation and aggression. Success is typically measured by the volume of debt collected. But the founder, Christina Harbridge, she instituted a WHY. Everyone has a story, and everyone deserves to be listened to.
That is completely counterintuitive for a debt collector. How on earth did she measure that soft, emotional WHY?
She changed the incentive structure entirely. She redefined the Hey Shao W. Her agents were not given bonuses based on the amount of money they collected. Instead, their bonuses were based on the number of thank you cards her agents sent out to debtors.
I'm struggling to reconcile a debt collection agency sending thank you notes. That is truly radical.
It required hiring people who genuinely believed her WHY. People who saw debt collection as mediation, not antagonism. An agent had to create enough rapport with the debtor during a 3-minute conversation that the debtor would express genuine gratitude, which then allowed the agent to send a note.
And the result of this internal WHY-driven metric?
Bridgeport collected 300% more than the industry average. By focusing on trust and cooperation, they actually exceeded the transactional goals far more effectively than their manipulative competitors.
That example it illustrates that the greatest commercial successes are often just incidental results of pursuing a deeply held belief. The money follows the conviction.
And it highlights the difference between fixing a symptom and fixing the cause. When organizations lack a WHY, they use rubber mallets to bang a crooked door into place, short-term fixes. When they have a clear WHY, the door is designed correctly from the start.
Speaking of making a concept stick and achieving mass success, how does a clear WHY actually tip an idea into the mainstream? This has to bring us to the sociology of movements and the law of diffusion.
Yes, this concept, which was popularized by Geoffrey Moore in Crossing the Chasm, is absolutely vital. For any kind of mass market success, a product or an idea has to cross a critical threshold, the chasm between the early market and the majority.
I know the bell curve model. You have the innovators, early adopters, then the majority, and finally the laggards.
The key is where you focus your energy. On the far left side of that curve sit the believers. The innovators, which are about 2.5%, and the early adopters, another 13.5%. We're talking about the critical 15 to 18% of the market.
And these people are different.
They're driven by conviction, they trust their gut, they're willing to pay a premium, and they are actively seeking products or ideas that serve as tangible symbols of their own beliefs.
These are the people who camp out for the first generation of a product.
Yeah.
Despite all the inevitable bugs and the high price, they want to be first because it makes a statement about who they are.
Exactly. They are loyal because the product validates their identity. And because they trust their intuition and they are passionate believers, they are the ones who will naturally spread the idea to others. They are the initial spark and the fuel for the fire.
Conversely, the rest of the curve, the early majority, late majority, and laggards, those are the pragmatic, evidence-based consumers. The ones I, the logic marketer, usually try to sell to with spec sheets.
The majority is practical. They rely on trusted recommendations and social proof. They are easily lured by features, price drops, or promotions, but they are rarely loyal. They wait until the product is proven, inexpensive, and standardized. They will not cross that chasm until the 18% of early adopters have done all the vetting work for them.
So the tipping point, mass market adoption, only happens when you successfully inspire that 18% of believers. And then they provide the trusted social validation that's needed to pull the practical majority across the chasm. If you aim your marketing at the middle of the curve, you fail to inspire the very people who drive the tipping point.
And that leads us directly to the tragedy of TiVo.
Oh, man. They had a superior category-defining product. Everyone knew the verb to TiVo, and yet the company failed commercially.
Because they communicated outside in. They completely ignored the law of diffusion. They marketed directly to the mass market by listing what their product did, focusing on features. It pauses live TV, it skips commercials, it records shows automatically. They focused entirely on the rational functionality.
And the practical majority, the early majority, they responded with skepticism. I don't get it. That sounds complicated. Why do I need to pause TV?
They failed to rally the 18% of believers. TiVo should have led with their WHY. The belief that consumers should have complete control over their content experience and never be dictated to by the networks. If they had inspired the people who believe in control and technological empowerment, those people would have endured the inconvenience and then they would have evangelized the product.
But they didn't.
Because TiVo focused on features, the mass market remained confused and uncompelled. And their stock price plummeted, even as millions of people today use cable company DVRs that just mimic TiVo's functionality.
So they own the innovation, but they failed at the inspiration. The lesson is, if you want mass adoption, you have to aim for the outliers first.
You have to give the believers something to believe in. And this principle scales far beyond technology into social movements like the civil rights movement.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is the ultimate example of a WHY-driven leader.
He embodied this principle absolutely. He was relentless in articulating his conviction. His purpose wasn't just civil rights. It was about moral law, about justice, about the fundamental way human beings should treat one another. And that philosophical WHY was powerful enough to rally hundreds of thousands of people who had never even met him.
When 250,000 people showed up for the March on Washington in 1963, they weren't paid, they weren't coerced, they weren't following a checklist. They showed up because they believed.
And they showed up not for Dr. King. They showed up for themselves, for their own idea of a changed America. The sources powerfully note that Dr. King gave the "I have a dream" speech, not the "I have a plan" speech. He didn't offer some complicated 12-point tactical plan, the how W or the what. He offered a singular shared vision of purpose, a WHY, that provided a rallying cry and an inspired place to belong.
The clarity of that dream, the WHY, it acted as a massive emotional magnet. And his ability to put that deep belief into words, even though the feeling originated in the languishless limbic brain, it provided the rational neocortex with the justification for action.
He became the symbol of that belief system. When people felt inspired, they could point to King and say, "Because I believe." That shared belief, that mutual trust, is what sustains a movement through hardship and eventually changes history. And this same principle applies whether you're running a business or attempting to achieve massive social change.
So all of this whole deep dive has been a forceful rejection of my natural feature-driven marketing mindset. The core lesson is that genuine, lasting leadership and inspiration require a clear, articulated WHY that resonates emotionally with the decision-making part of the brain, bypassing those often skeptical rational filters.
Indeed. And for every founder who has that natural emotional WHY, like a Walt Disney, you often need an inspired how W-type partner, like his brother Roy. Walt was the visionary dreamer, the WHY, but Roy was the brilliant financier and operational mind, the HOW, who built the disciplined infrastructure to bring that dream to life, ensuring the long-term survival of the empire. That WI-Shao partnership, where the what remains consistent with the belief, that's essential for monumental influence.
This is a lot to process. We've seen the biology, the structure of the case studies. I think it's time for a final thought to leave our audience with.
We have one. Just remember the power of the dream over the plan. True leaders and organizations like Martin Luther King Jr. do not offer a 12-point plan, the how W. They offer a dream, the WHO. People didn't show up for Dr. King. They showed up for themselves and what they believed. And that shared belief is what changed the country. You must discover that shared belief for yourself, because until you know your WAY, you can't inspire others to join you.
So the practical challenge for everyone listening is to define their own personal or organizational WHY statement.
Yes. We challenge you to draft your own WHY statement right now by filling in this blank, which forces you to articulate a cause independent of your product. So that they're come or for example. To empower the little guys so that they can compete with giants. If you can't complete that sentence without mentioning your product or service, you're still defining yourself by what you do, and you haven't yet unlocked your potential for true inspiration.
I need to rewrite my landing page. It's all specs.
Burn the specs. Tell them what you believe. Subscribe to Wealth Distilled.